much for the kind introduction, John. Thanks for the introduction, Ruan, as well. I really appreciate it. And most of all, thanks for you for listening to me and your time and the commitment to this program. It does say something. You're still prepared at 5 o'clock to listen to, firstly, an advocate and then someone who claims to specialize in ethics. The whole law and ethics thing's always quite confusing to people. At least this time I've learned as I got older not to be introduced as the fraud specialist. That also happens. Now it's mostly anti-fraud, right? So I've been asked to speak a little bit about integrity. I take it that you've read through your workbooks, so I haven't repeated what you already have. I rather wanted to make a little bit more about, with our time, and bring you some of what we see in practice. We train. That's what we do. We train. So we develop programs for companies that are aimed and focused on how do you prevent wrongdoing, which would include criminal, unethical, and irregularities in an organization. We tailor-make it because we can't speak to the same things for directors in terms of legal liability. Basically with them, all I say to them is you're going to end up in jail. And that then normally helps a little bit for them to sit up straight and listen. But we start always by saying, does it pay to be ethical? Because that is what it's all about. And I think we are in the times where the economy has pressed a little bit. People always say to me, Janette, you must be extremely busy in this country. And then I always reply, but remember, the guys who really need us don't want us around. So that's always, the good guys ask us to come. But we show organizations that it pays to be ethical. You end up making more money. It's as simple as that. Employees are happier. You can go through, you can build your reputation. You can recover if something goes wrong. Steinhoff is having a difficult time recovering. But if you think of a company like Toyota, and I'm just mentioning little examples, they have recalled cars in the past, with a little engine problem or with this or that, and they're still going strongly. I, for that matter, drive a Toyota. But on the other hand, the Ford Cougar incident was a little bit different. The guy sat on information, the person had died 4 months before they actually said something, a second person had to die first. So the question is, from an ethics perspective, how many people have to first die before you actually end up saying something? At what point is your financial implication for recalling cars, good enough for you to say that's enough? We also look at, where there's an ethics program in companies or you actively fight corruption or anti-fraud initiatives going, people are more motivated. Good people leave bad businesses. So they're more motivated, there's a good morale, there's a good culture, people are more committed, they're more loyal, they don't post on WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter, my boss is a criminal, whatever else. You can only imagine the things that they say. We've actually now started expanding on training companies on how to use your social media responsibly. Okay. Try not to make racist or any discriminatory comments from any, nature. Right. We also see that companies that are good and they're focused, and I'm thinking of the example that you've had from Exaro, the previous speaker. I want to work for a company like that. In the olden days, employees, CEOs would say to me, Janette, we can't speak about these things. It's wrong. Because are we admitting that we've got problems? It would be tantamount to not doing AIDS, HIV, education in companies, or no safety training. Because what if there's an accident? It's the same way. If you speak about these things openly, people see things that are wrong, they are prepared to come forward because they realize that's not what we want to do. That's not how we do business. So ultimately, we also see that organizations end up getting a competitive edge and an advantage, and people want to do business with them. Right. So what are the reasons behind dishonest and unethical behavior? I've always been tickled a little bit by why on earth would you want to steal from the person paying your salary? It just doesn't make sense. If you look at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, their estimate is that the average organization loses about 5% of annual turnover to occupational fraud and abuse. Not of profit, turnover. If you think of the big companies, the Group 5s and the Basil Reeds and the Murray and Roberts, who were fined for price fixing and collusion in terms of our Competition Act, they were fined, by the way, do you know what the fine is, the percentage? 10% of annual turnover. Do you know what their profit margins are? I know I did a lot of useless training there, clearly. They run on profits of between 4 and 5% per annum. If you get fined 10% of your annual turnover, can you understand? It took about 3 years for them to wipe out the operating capital. And that just happened to coincide with a bit of a, slowdown in the whole building industry. My husband's a civil engineer, so I noticed that. Right. So the reasons for wrongful behavior is that, firstly, we are ethical people. That's why you're here. You wouldn't attend a program such as this if this wasn't important to you. But we tend to think that everyone is like us. And they have the same morals and values, the same views. I mean, you and I wouldn't take a cell phone that's been lost. But other people, unfortunately, sometimes would. What makes you do that? And I've seen that unless we actively speak about this, these things go wrong. And I always think, with our children, it comes naturally. Don't do that, give the pen back, it isn't yours, where did you find this? No, don't lie to mom, I won't be able to trust you. So that comes natural. We educate, we speak about things, we tell them what the consequences are. If you lie to me, I won't be able to trust you, la la la. But for some reason, at work, we don't have these conversations. And I have literally been privileged to train thousands of people. And I ask them, so if your colleague at work is stealing something from the company, would you report it? None of my business, Janette. I'm not going to be the one to blow the whistle. And can you understand? They're actually stealing from themselves, in a way, because that's where all the bonuses and the profit go. Right. So this is, I just want to click here, a little video from Professor Dan Ariely. I'm going to stop it about halfway, but pay close attention. He speaks about the reasons why people do things wrong. You can Google Professor Dan Ariely, and this little video is RSA, South Africa, The Truth About Dishonesty. He then carries on, they looked at the Catholic confession, etc., and so on, to try and figure out what would make people cheat less. But just to summarize the rest of the video, what in the end happens, there's a switching effect. He refers to it as the what the hell effect, where people start cheating all the time. That's that organization where the culture has become so rotten that even good people start joining, if you just leave them there long enough. And I've seen quite a bit of that across the culture, right? So that's an interesting, they're just thinking of the learning points from this video. That to me stands out. It is so that the moral reminders daily around us keeps us honest as well. I always like to compare that to when who of you does some sort of exercise, formal running, cycling, gymming? Who of you? Oh, I'm so glad to see some people actually still. I'm a squash player, so I've got a squash partner. It's important because it's extremely boring to do it on your own. So, I like winning, so I need someone to beat. And what happens is I can't just not pitch, because then I'm letting down my part. And it's the same with that. I've got someone who reminds me, who keeps me accountable. And that's what the culture should be at work. The culture should be a culture, we just don't do this around here, even when the boss is not around. Right. So let's just quickly look at, many times in business, people ask me, Janette, where does ethics fit in as a topic? Especially in the light of the fact that we are extremely legislated in this country. We're not as litigious as in America because we have to pay our own legal cost. That don't necessarily. So we get cost orders against us if we lose as well. So this is what happens. The law is about complying or else. Penalties. Ask Group 5 and Basil Reid. There may be consequences that are extremely negative, not even speaking about having to go to jail. But they're negative. I can't argue with SARS about the 15% VAT monthly. No, write them a little note, I don't agree, sir. It's not going to help me much. The laws in South Africa are quite interesting. We've taken away morality issues. Can you think of what that is? Abortion. It's no longer criminal. Gambling. Okay. Pornography, apart from child pornography, that's still illegal. There's a lot of other stuff that are not that serious, for example, having a tattoo or not. It's a morality issue, but it's not illegal. It never was. So certain variants about how serious it may be. So we said, when we became a democracy, we're not going to legislate on that as a government. That should be left to an adult's choice. That's why child porn is still a criminal offence. Right? So good and well, if you have a healthy society. But if you don't, then potentially you're in trouble. So now people come to work using alcohol if you're 18. It's also not illegal. I hope it's not good news for anybody, but anyway, so you can come to work, and then what if you're under the influence of something? Marijuana is now legal for personal. So can you do that at work? So companies have to have policies and guidelines and rules and codes and whatever you want to refer it as, good corporate governance practices, the structures, the controls, the direction of a company in order to ensure long-term sustainability. Right, so we've got to get guidance. And policies are about how do we comply often with the law. Just to ensure that we're doing things legally as an organization, it's very important. We can't take that out. Our policies may not violate the law. That we can't do. If the law says 4 months of maternity leaves, we can't have some sort of another policy, listen back next week. Right. So that then leaves us with the third, leg, if you want to compare it with a chair. And that's ethics and values. Where does all of that fit in? The one thing we've learned, it's extremely difficult to make a good rule or a policy because you always end up missing something. You can't build a house here, but what about a shack? Okay, also not a shack. What about tents? Forget tents. What about a caravan? So you end up playing catch up, and it just becomes extremely difficult. Eskom at one point asked me to review their policies. They had 3,000. I cleverly said, no, thank you. Right. So ethical values are all about the manner in which we do things. I can comply with the law or the rule, for example, minimum salaries. But then it could still raise the question whether I'm treating my employees fairly. So ethics actually is the highest standard, complying, doing the most I can with the best I can. There are ethical situations that justify the breaking of the law. Can you think of an example? Your wife is in labor. Right. So if you like my husband, he drives neatly and slowly. He's an engineer. At one point I said to him, I think you might want to consider going a little bit faster. Right. So you might even cross a red light in the interest of saving a life. And no court of law shall find you guilty. Okay, so even it's the highest standard that we can actually uphold is to be ethical, to do the right thing. Compliance is to do things right. Ethics is to do the right thing. If you think about it, there's a difference, right? So we want to teach that in our organization. We want to teach ethical decision making so that when I don't have a rule or a policy, I'll still make the right choice in the best interest of the organization and our good name. So if I break the law, we may have crimes, penalties, fines, wrongdoing. If I break the company policies, we normally refer to it as an irregularity occurred. There was misconduct, mismanagement. In government, we often refer to it as maladministration. And then lastly, if I broke universal values, then we normally say I was unethical. Right, so that's just the principles. So quick ethics vocabulary. Right, are you ready? So what's meant by ethics? It concerns the doing. It's an action. It involves choices, doing, living up to. Sadly, and I don't want to pick on Eskom, but they give us quite a lot of reason to, they have 4 values, and they're very, very good values. Their values, by the way, the first value is customer satisfaction, excellence, integrity, and innovation. But if we don't see those values in the way that the company is governed, or service delivery, or prices for electricity, then you and I are very sort of distrusting, isn't it so? And it's good that we would be. Right, so ethics concerns the doing of what is right, what is good, what is fair. It involves responsible behavior, if I'm a leader, responsible choices, in the long-term interest of the organization, and ultimately considering others. Now think of our roads. If people drove with the attitude of doing what's right and good and fair, considering others and being responsible, we wouldn't need that many traffic laws. Isn't it so? We have the highest death toll in the world, by the way. So there's a fantastic article written, the correlation between immorality and immortality. Right. So organizational ethics is to identify and implement standards of conduct. Can you see the behavior? How do I behave at work? How do I conduct myself when I deal with a client or a customer or my colleague that I might not like? Right. That ensures that the interests of all its stakeholders are respected. The community within which we do work. Okay. Our suppliers, are they paid in time? Etc. and so on. That's what ethics is all about. Right. Morals and ethics are different. If you remember nothing else, remember this one thing. Morality and universal values are different. Morals are based on a particular like or dislike. Tattooing. You either like it or you don't. I can't say whether it's right or wrong. Do you understand? It's not about right or wrong. It's a personal choice. And you might in 20 years not like the tattoo that you got when you were 16 and you had a little bit too much to drink. Right? I always try and just sensitize my sons to that. So morality changes over time. The way you dress, the music you listen to, where you live, the paintings, anything that you like. You know, the type of movies that you watch. All of those may have moral implications, right? So corporal punishment, we've seen that in South Africa as well. So there's a lot of stuff and it's personal. Gambling. So from a religious point of view, as a Christian, I do have a problem with a lot of those things. But you understand, can you see, it's a personal, religious choice that I've made and I make daily. But I can't say that for everybody. Right. So ethics and values, ladies and gentlemen, if you just remember this, is not about a personal choice or not. It's based on formalized standards, universally known, about what is right and good and fair. Mahatma Gandhi, just to mention another religion, he would say that he believes to live in peace with others is a universal value. Do you agree with it? What do you think? No, not to make war. It doesn't mean that the value is never breached. There are those that make war or kill others. But the value of peace in itself is so important that we can all recognize it. We can think of other values. To show respect, equality, diversity, transparency, honesty, etc. All of those are recognized. And if I ask staff at companies, they all sort of know what it is. When I ask them to start putting action points to the value, that becomes a little bit more difficult. It's good and well to say that I'm honest, but when I ask someone, but then will you report your friend at work when they steal? Now it becomes a little bit more difficult. Okay, to still say whether I'm honest or not. Right? So that, the formalized professional ethics that we teach is about the standard that we expect from everybody at the work. So how do I know what those standards are if my employer have never communicated it to me? Can you see what happens? Now my personal morals becomes sort of the barometer or the compass, whatever you want to say. Now if you have good morals, that's fantastic, but what if you don't? Dana really spoke about the fact that it's easy to download music illegally. Okay, because it's not really seen as wrong. So, I mean, if I make private photocopies at work, is it really wrong? Can you see what happens? This whole thing becomes very debatable. And now we get into a personal fight. Listen, don't quiet me if I speak loudly. It's part of my culture. The fact that you can't concentrate isn't my problem. Okay, and if I want to dress this way, you know, because I think it's important, you're just being too conservative. Janette, you need to lighten up a little bit. Can you see what happens? It's no longer the value of respect for others and for myself and for our customers and colleagues, etc., that guides my choices. It becomes a personal thing. That's where things go wrong. Okay. So, ethics show us the way to do the right thing in the workplace environment. And it requires more than just the minimum. I'll never forget, I bumped into a South African police services woman at the airport. I was checking out my camera and I wanted to make sure that my permit was still valid, following the rules. And she was sort of, you know what teenagers sit like. I'm so glad I haven't seen any of you sit like. You know, they like sort of lie down on the chair. And she was sitting like this, and when I left and I said, thank you so much for assisting me, I just sort of made a comment trying to be friendly. I said, okay, have a good afternoon, don't work too hard. She replied, unexpectedly, and she said, I'm trying not to. Okay, so that value of serving me, excellence, clearly. Okay. So our values are our standards. ethics and values and what we see as important. In the workplace, as a leader, it is your duty to communicate that. And you can get input from your staff, but you're the leader. You must set the tone. Most importantly, show the way through your own example. That's the most difficult. I had a lady at financial sector, I always enjoy that. She actually asked me before the training, would I pertinently speak to her staff about the fact that they abuse lunch hour? So it's more a lunch 2-hour break, because there was a shopping mall close by. I thought, never build your offices close to a shopping mall, right? Rule 1. So it was, did so, she attended, and after class, she came to me. And she said, Janette, do you think it is a problem that, and I can see she's a little bit uncomfortable, that I take extended lunches? Now you can see why I get paid a lot of money. Right, this is so difficult for a lawyer to figure out. So I said, well, the problem is if you take extended lunches, and she says she justifies by saying, I work late on occasion. So over a weekend, I just don't have enough time to get all my personal stuff done. So I have to take longer lunch hours to fit it all in. So needless to say, I said, the problem is when you are working late, your staff have left the building. So they don't know this. All they see is that you are not back at 1 or 2, whatever. And so they just follow the example. You shouldn't be surprised at all. So that's quite difficult. She's a little bit surprised. But anyway, so there the values are that I've mentioned: respect and transparency and equality, so on, innovation, compassion. Values may be ranked, ordered. What is most important? Think of a value such as compassion. That would be highly important if you think of the nursing industry, isn't it so? Compassion in the banking industry is not as important. Okay, but integrity and confidentiality, I hope, would be very important, right? So what's also interesting, if you look at the golden rule of ethics, do unto others as you would like done unto yourself. We know that from our word. But you find it in all the other religions, the major religions as well. Islam, Muslim, Hinduism. This is a sum of duty. Do not unto others what you would not have them do unto you. That's why we can say it is universal, because it's about fairness. Treating others the way you would like to be treated. Right. So ethics at work, we take that and we contextualize that. What does it mean for me as a nurse? When the dying patient presses their little bell, then it is, good practice to actually get up and go and check what is wrong. Okay. I've got friends working in hospitals, and you must hear the stories. It's horrendous. Scary act. Don't get ill. That's my best advice. If you get ill, die at home. It's cheaper, much cheaper, right? The problem is values should be lived. Right. And that's the problem. We don't see these values translated into action. We call it print, post, and pray. Nee, we print these nice banners, post them up somewhere, and then we just pray things don't go wrong. We find that with parents, with teenagers, where parents don't have the guts or the courage to hear things they'd rather not know. Have you heard that? No, I don't want to know. Okay. Takes courage sometimes. So, because of the different morals in the view, in society, in the viewpoints, we need to decide what is best practice at work. What are the values that guide our behavior? So typically, if you would go to my website, it would be on my website, because it's important for me that those that do business with me must understand where we come from. And I don't know if you know, but you may bind any supplier, any service provider, any employee to the values that your organization subscribes to. If I teach for any of the varsities, quite a few, in my contract, it says, I shall abide by their code of ethics, which is only right. Okay, so if a supplier offers my staff a bribe for some sort of benefit they shouldn't get, then that contract, if that's my contract, is null and void and can immediately be terminated. I don't even have to prove the crime. It's a breach of the value of integrity or honesty. So that's quite handy. It's a handy free tip. Write it in your contracts. Fine. Okay. So the core values, as we mentioned, what is important to most people? What are those things that I don't want to compromise? It also tells us how our stakeholders should be treated, as I mentioned, and then how the employees behave towards each other. And we see that now, where we can take leaders to task in an organization, but we can only do so if the ethics code was clear and they were trained on it and understood what it meant. We do ethics investigations. It's sometimes very difficult to prove the criminal side of things because I have to have video. But ethics is quite easy because I say, what did they say to you? What did she call you? Okay. And guess what happens? They get dismissed. Right. So we always say to staff also, values literally are right, like the road signs, and they show us the way, and we do get lost without them from time to time. So we know that successful organizations need a shared set of values. And it's benefited me so much in my life. I didn't always see that, know that. I have friends, good friends, that have different moral views in life. So we see things morally quite different, but we're very good friends because we share the same values. You know, people that are compassionate and they care and they're honest and they will do anything for friendship and loyalty. Okay? And it makes me overcome all those things that used to irritate me about other people because I can just accept them if we share the same values. And if we have that at work, can you think how much easier it would be to get along with everyone as well? So then being an ethical person, I'm closing, always remember there's no right way of doing the wrong thing. Janette, did you have to tell us that? Okay. There isn't. So it's wrong is wrong. Okay. And we always say it does take courage at times, and sometimes it's going to be inconvenient. And you might have to make certain sacrifices. For example, if you are associated to a company that is paying bribes, leave, resign, find another job. If you can't challenge them. And I've advised that legally to clients. Where they're executive director positions, they just, ignored. And I say, you're going to end up in jail. And they leave. And I know it's the end of my contract. Which it duly was. But I'd rather do that than be associated with companies that are willingly paying bribes or doing other things that are fraudulent. Right. So we have to have integrity. That's the first thing. That's what I'm supposed to speak about. Chief Justice Mogoeng, that's been in the news. I've liked him long ago already. You only started liking him now. He defined integrity. I listened to a speech of his that he gave at the Law Society, and he quoted Professor Montgomery van Wart at Texas Tech University. And he says, a person with integrity will be willing to talk the truth, even if it's not comfortable. Okay. They will be consistent. No preferential treatment. They will treat others the way they would like to be treated. We know that by now. They will use the necessary discernment in taking decisions. I always say, apply your mind. Be intellectually honest. Right. They will strive for excellence in everything they do, and they will show remarkable candor. Right. He says a person of integrity will ultimately demonstrate a high level of conscientiousness. They will follow through on their promises and show unusual astuteness or wisdom in meeting competing interests. And I think that's what you heard from Exara as well. We are often as leaders faced with very difficult choices. And we just have that discernment to understand what it's all about. I'm not going to play you this video in the interest of time, but it's a short video also, and it just speaks to the fact that if you say you have integrity, keep your promises. It's as simple as that. If you say to a friend, I'll call you tomorrow, then call them. And it's the same at work, where promises are made. You know that old saying, always under-promise and over-deliver. I've really taught that to myself. So it just makes my life easier as well. So a person with integrity, in closing, will keep their promises and they will be reliable. Do you know what the biggest single sought after characteristic is? I'm not speaking about experience or qualification. Characteristic that employers are seeking for in prospective employees? Do you know? Reliability. That's a single. So young people come to me in class and they say, Janette, what must I do? What must I study? And this is really a big effort to study. It's also expensive. You know what? Just be reliable. Be the one who's there, who keeps your promises, who delivers without having to ask 20 times. Okay. They'll be willing to talk the truth, even if it's difficult. They'll be honest and transparent. They'll strive for excellence, apply their minds, and be seen ultimately also as a professional. Professional people have integrity. Right. So in closure, I'm not going to do the two other values, the best set of policies and organizations and rules. And I mean, remember, again, I'm a lawyer. I'm supposed to work with laws. It doesn't work. It won't have an impact if your culture isn't healthy, if there isn't a culture of respect and fairness, etc. So we have to actively build that, right? We define that by saying this is the way things are done. And you see that in organizations. Have you walked into a place and just have that sense of safety and trust, you just feel these people will keep their promises. And I've also seen the opposite. Like, ooh, nee, run fast. Okay. So where the values are lived, we'll have that culture in the workplace. It gives us guidance where employees don't always know right from wrong because we have different moral values. Remember that we come from different backgrounds. But what is important in leadership is the values that employees perceive are actually more important than those ones that are advertised or claimed. They check you out. Nee. You know that when you're in the car, have you seen that for people? You think they don't see them. Nee. Have you seen that? I was in the Uber car the other day, and the guy next to me, the lady, the light was flashing, and she was allowed to turn left, but she didn't see, so the car behind her was hooting. She was on the phone doing all, and I said to that Uber, check, she's going to put on her lipstick next. Lo and behold, she takes out her lipstick, and she puts on. We canned ourselves. So people can see. Right. So expressed ethical leadership support is paramount. It's not good enough to just be ethical. I truly thought that, as long as I'm ethical. No, you have to support it, you have to reward it, you have to discipline a failure, you have to actively speak about it and promote it, you have to even put money behind it to make a good message. And we've seen companies that are serious about that will actually pay for proper ethics programs, right? So in conclusion, high levels of perceived integrity lead to improvements in productivity, profitability, and better industrial relationships. People get along, even if they are different. It's a happy place to be. And ultimately, it's more attractive to job applicants. So it enables you and it gives you that competitive advantage to attract and retain good talent. Okay, I'm now just going to stop. Like when you're just sitting there praying that the minister will say amen now. I'm just now going to say amen. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.